The moment I heard him whisper her name through the phone, my world cracked like thin ice beneath my feet. It wasn't the first lie my husband had told me, but it would definitely be the last. My name is Georgina. I'm 24 years old and I never thought I'd be filing for divorce before my second wedding anniversary. But here I am, rebuilding my life piece by piece after discovering that my husband's urgent business trip was actually a romantic getaway with his mistress. It was one evening when everything fell apart. I remember because I had just finished making David's favorite dinner, garlic butter salmon with roasted potatoes. He loved when I cooked for him and I thought a special meal might brighten his mood. He'd been distant lately, always on his phone, working late, barely looking me in the eyes when we spoke. "Babe, I'm so sorry," he said, rushing into the kitchen while I was setting the table. "Johnson just called. There's an emergency with the Cincinnati account. I need to fly out first thing tomorrow morning." I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment. This would be his third emergency trip this month. "How long will you be gone?" I asked, placing the plates on the table more forcefully than necessary. "Just 2 nights. I'll be back Friday evening," he replied, not quite meeting my eyes. He kissed my cheek quickly before heading upstairs to pack. Something about his behavior felt off. Maybe it was the way he avoided my gaze, or how he seemed almost relieved to be leaving. Whatever it was, a voice inside me whispered that something wasn't right. After dinner, David went into the guest bedroom to make some work calls. He always did this now, took his calls in private, spoke in hushed tones. A year ago he would have talked business right in front of me, not caring if I overheard discussions about marketing strategies or budget concerns. I was loading the dishwasher when I realized I needed to ask him about our weekend plans with his parents. They were expecting us for Sunday brunch, and with him returning Friday, I wanted to confirm we were still going. I walked toward the guest room about to knock when I heard his voice, soft, intimate, nothing like his business voice. "I can't wait to see you either, Vanessa," he murmured. "The Harrington Hotel, yes. Rooms already booked under the company name so no one will know. 2 whole days just for us." My hand froze mid-air. Vanessa, the new marketing director he'd hired 6 months ago. The one he'd mentioned casually, perhaps too casually, in conversation. The one whose social media I'd noticed him liking late at night when he thought I was asleep. "I told her it's Cincinnati again," he continued with a low laugh. "She doesn't suspect a thing. Never does." My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I backed away from the door silently, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? How many business trips had actually been rendezvous with Vanessa? How many dinners had I lovingly prepared while he was planning to be with her? Back in the kitchen, I gripped the counter to steady myself. I could confront him now, create a scene, demand answers, but something stopped me. A small, cold voice inside me whispered that I deserved better than begging for explanations or pleading for him to choose me. I deserved better than being the fool who didn't know her husband was sleeping with his employee just a year into our marriage. That night, I lay beside him in bed, pretending to sleep while my mind formed a plan. He reached for me in the darkness, probably feeling guilty, wanting to ease his conscience through physical affection. I turned away, claiming a headache. He didn't persist. The next morning, I kissed him goodbye as he headed for the airport, playing the role of loving, unsuspecting wife. "Have a safe trip," I said, forcing a smile. "Hope you fix whatever's wrong with the Cincinnati account." "Thanks, babe. I'll text when I land," he replied, wheeling his suitcase toward the waiting Uber. As soon as his car disappeared down our street, I called my closest friend, Zoe. "He's cheating," I said the moment she answered. "And I need your help." Zoe had always been skeptical of David. "Too smooth," she'd said when I first introduced them. "Guys that charming usually have something to hide." I defended him then, accusing her of being cynical. Now I wished I'd listened. "What do you need?" she asked without hesitation. "A ride to the Harrington Hotel tomorrow," I replied. "And possibly a place to stay for a while after that." "You've got it," she said simply. "And Georgina? I'm so sorry." I spent that day in a strange, focused haze. I called a lawyer Zoe recommended, explaining my situation and scheduling a consultation for the following week. I gathered important documents, Our marriage certificate, financial records, property deeds. I packed a suitcase with essentials, just enough to get by for a couple of weeks. And I cried, allowing myself exactly 1 hour of tears before pulling myself together. David texted that afternoon. Landed safely. Meeting starting soon. Miss you. I stared at those 3 final words. Miss you, and felt nothing but disgust. How easy it was for him to lie, to play the devoted husband while he was on his way to meet another woman. I didn't reply. That night I barely slept. I kept imagining them together, wondering if he told her he loved her, if he made the same promises to her that he'd made to me. By morning, my sadness had hardened into something stronger, determination. Zoe picked me up at noon. You sure about this? She asked as we drove toward the Harrington, a swanky downtown hotel known for its discretion and luxury. I need to see it with my own eyes, I said. Need to know I'm not crazy. Then I can move forward. The Harrington's lobby was all marble and crystal chandeliers. I approached the front desk, heart pounding. The young man behind the counter smiled politely. Good afternoon. How may I help you? I returned his smile, channeling the confidence I didn't feel. I'm supposed to meet my husband, David Chin. He's here for business. Could you let me know his room number? I'd like to surprise him. The concierge tapped at his computer. Mr. Chin is in room 718. Would you like me to call up and let him know you're here? No, thank you, I replied. It wouldn't be a surprise then, would it? He nodded, understanding. Elevators are to your right. Zoe squeezed my hand as we walked toward the elevators. Want me to come up with you? I shook my head. I need to do this alone. The elevator ride to the 7th floor felt eternal. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked surprisingly calm. A young woman in jeans and a blue sweater, brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, no visible sign of the storm raging inside her. Only my eyes, wide and too bright, betrayed my emotional state. Room 718 was at the end of a long hallway. I stood outside the door for several minutes, listening. I could hear muffled laughter inside, then music being turned up. My hands trembled as I knocked. The door opened and there stood David, my husband of nearly 2 years, wearing nothing but a hotel bathrobe. His expression shifted from expectant to shocked to terrified in the span of seconds. Georgina, he gasped. What? How? Hello, David, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. Sorry to interrupt your business meeting. From inside the room came a woman's voice. David? Who is it? I stepped past him into the suite. It was exactly what I'd expected. Champagne on ice, scattered clothing, rumpled bedsheets. And there she was, Vanessa, wrapped in another hotel bathrobe, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders, her lipstick slightly smudged. Oh, she said when she saw me. Oh God. At least she had the decency to look mortified. Georgina, I can explain, David started, reaching for my arm. I jerked away from his touch. No need, I said. I heard everything yesterday. The Cincinnati account, right? Such an emergency. I turned to Vanessa. Does he call you babe too? Does he tell you you're the only one who really understands him? He paled, looking between us. He said you were separated. That you were only staying together until the lease on your apartment ended. I laughed, though there was no humor in it. We bought a house together last year. No lease. And the only separation happening is the one I'm about to initiate. David stepped toward me. Baby, please. This isn't what it looks like. Save it. I cut him off. I didn't come for explanations or apologies. I came so I could see the truth with my own eyes. I looked at them both, these strangers who had shattered my world. Tao I have. I walked out, ignoring David's calls for me to come back to talk about this, to let him explain. In the elevator, my composure finally broke. I leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe through the sobs that racked my body. By the time I reached the lobby, I had pulled myself together enough to walk straight back through the hotel and out to where Zoe waited in her car. It's done, I said as I slid into the passenger seat. Take me home. I need to pack more things. Your place or mine? She asked gently. Yours, I replied. I'm not staying in that house another night. Over the next few days, David called me constantly. I didn't answer. He filled my voicemail with tearful apologies, explanations, promises to change. I listened to the first few messages, then stopped. Each one was more desperate than the last. Georgina, please. I made a terrible mistake. Baby, I love you. Only you. This thing with Vanessa. It didn't mean anything. Please come home. We can fix this. I'll do therapy, whatever you want. At least tell me where you are. I'm worried sick. I texted him once. I'm safe. Don't contact me again except through my lawyer. Then I blocked his number. He showed up at Zoe's apartment 3 days later. I don't know how he found me. Maybe he guessed, or perhaps he'd gone through my phone at some point and memorized her address. I refused to see him. Zoe told him I was serious about the divorce, that flowers and tears wouldn't change anything. He left a handwritten letter that I burned without reading. The meeting with my lawyer, Ms. Rivera, went well. She was a sharp woman in her 50s who had seen every possible variation of infidelity and divorce. Given the circumstances and the fact that you don't have children, this should be relatively straightforward, she explained. Florida is an equitable distribution state, so you're entitled to a fair share of marital assets. I nodded. I don't want anything from him except my freedom, I said. She fixed me with a stern look. I understand you're hurt, but don't let emotions cloud your judgment about finances. You contributed to this marriage too, even if it was brief. I hired her on the spot. The next day, David was served with divorce papers at his office. I imagined the look on his face, the whispers of his colleagues, Vanessa's discomfort. Part of me took satisfaction in that public humiliation, though I knew it was petty. 2 weeks after moving out, I returned to our house while David was at work to collect more of my belongings. It felt strange, like walking through a museum of my former life. Photos of us still hung on the walls. Our wedding day, vacations, holiday gatherings with family. I took none of them. In the bedroom, I found evidence that he was falling apart. Unwashed clothes piled on the floor, empty takeout containers on the nightstand, our bed unmade. On my pillow lay my favorite sweater, the soft gray one he'd always loved to see me in. A silent plea for my return. I left it there. As I was loading boxes into my car, his mother called me. Georgina, please reconsider, she begged. David is devastated. He made a terrible mistake, but he loves you. People can change. I'm sorry, Ellen, I replied, genuinely sad to be losing my relationship with my mother-in-law, who had always been kind to me. But I deserve better than being someone's mistake. You're so young, she said. Both of you. Young people make errors in judgment. This wasn't an error in judgment, I countered. This was a series of deliberate choices he made over and over, to lie to me and betray our vows. She had no response to that. A month after I moved out, David finally agreed to mediation. We met in a sterile conference room downtown with our lawyers present. It was the first time I'd seen him since the hotel. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes, and his usual confident demeanor was gone. Georgina, he said softly when I walked in. His voice broke on my name. I nodded in acknowledgement but didn't speak directly to him. Throughout the 4-hour session, I addressed only my lawyer and the mediator, discussing asset division, the sale of our house, separation of our finances. When we took a break, he cornered me by the water cooler. Please, he whispered. One conversation. That's all I'm asking for. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. The man I had loved enough to marry, to imagine building a life with. The man who had stood before our friends and family and promised to be faithful and true. Why? I asked simply. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't know. I really don't. I was selfish and stupid. I threw away the best thing in my life and I don't even understand why I did it. Then we have nothing to talk about, I said. Because that's the only question I have. The mediation ended with a preliminary agreement. We'd sell the house and split the proceeds. I'd keep my car, he'd keep his. Our savings would be divided equally. Simple, clean. The divorce would be final in a few months. As I left the building, he followed me to the parking lot. Georgina, wait. I turned. We're done, David. The papers are filed. It's over. I know, he said, his voice small. I want you to know that I'll regret what I did for the rest of my life. And if there is ever a chance, any chance at all. There isn't, I said firmly. Find someone else to lie to. I got into my car and drove away without looking back. The weeks turned into months. I moved into my own apartment, a small one-bedroom with a tiny balcony where I grew herbs and tomatoes. I threw myself into my work as a graphic designer, taking on extra freelance projects to keep busy in the evenings. I started therapy, working through the anger and betrayal, learning to trust my instincts again. David continued his campaign to win me back even after the divorce was finalized. He sent emails I didn't read, left voicemails I deleted. On what would have been our second anniversary, a massive bouquet arrived at my office. I gave the flowers to the receptionist and blocked the florist's number. 6 months after our divorce became final, I ran into him at a coffee shop. I nearly turned and walked out, but something made me stay. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe I needed to prove to myself that he no longer had power over me. He spotted me in line and froze, coffee cup halfway to his lips. After a moment's hesitation, he approached. "Hi," he said cautiously. "Hello, David," I replied, surprised by how calm I felt. "You look good," he said. It wasn't a line. His eyes held genuine appreciation and regret. "Thank you." I ordered my coffee, a simple lot. He hovered nearby as if afraid I'd disappear if he blinked. "How are you?" he asked as I waited for my drink. "I'm well," I said. "Really well, actually." He nodded. "I'm glad. You deserve to be happy." There was an awkward pause before he added, "I miss you. Every day." The barista called my name. I took my coffee and faced David one last time. "You don't miss me," I said gently. "You miss who you were when you were with me. The version of yourself you could have been if you'd made different choices." His eyes filled with tears. "Maybe you're right. But I am sorry, Georgina. More than I can ever express." "I forgive you," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. "Not for you, but for me. I don't want to carry the weight of what you did anymore." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you. That means more than you know." I nodded, then stepped around him toward the door. "Goodbye, David." "Goodbye, Georgina," he whispered. Outside, the spring air was fresh and full of promise. I was 24 years old, divorced and starting over. But as I walked down the street, latte in hand, I realized I wasn't broken or damaged by what had happened. I was stronger, wiser, more certain of my worth. The life I had planned was gone. The house with David, the children we'd talked about having, the future we'd mapped out together. In its place was something unexpected: freedom. The freedom to discover who I was without him, what I wanted for myself alone. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe, checking if we were still on for dinner with her new boyfriend. I smiled and replied yes. Life was moving forward, and so was I. The last time I saw David was a year after our divorce. He was across the street, walking hand in hand with a woman I didn't recognize. He didn't see me. I watched them for a moment, feeling nothing but a distant sadness. Not for what I'd lost, but for what could have been if he'd been the man I thought he was. Then I continued on my way toward my own future, leaving the past firmly where it belonged. Thank you for listening to this story. If you have been inspired, please like and subscribe to our channel for daily revenge stories. See you on the next one.